YouTube has changed my life in the last 12 months, and I think it can do the same for you. So I wanted to give you this special episode. This is actually from a private conversation that everyone has given their blessing on to show you inside of arlansmastermind.com, where people pay $5,000 per year to mastermind with me, but also every single week I bring in a new expert to mastermind. And these are 6, 7, and even 8-figure experts who come in for 90 minutes and we talk. I interview them, and then we have questions from the members themselves. They talk directly about their own lives, and it's really, really cool. And this week's guest was Callum Johnson, who has had several viral videos on YouTube. He does the Callum Johnson Show, where he interviews guests in mostly business and self-help. And I have been a guest on his show. I think our episode has more than 300,000 views. And I had a blast recording it. He was so professional, so prepared. That happened in January of 2024, and it just exploded once we had it online. Since then, he's had multiple videos like this. And he started at his mother's house in an extra bedroom in New Jersey and just kind of took off from there. Now, he's originally from England, which you'll hear in his voice, but this is most of that time with him. So I want you to take out your notebook. And remember, people were paying $5,000 to be in this program. And we thought, you'll see at the end, I was like, we have to show this to YouTube. We have to show this to my audience because it's going to help so many people. So please enjoy this behind the scenes look with Callum Johnson in my mastermind. First of all, Callum, I looked at your channel again yesterday and today, and I noticed that I'm in 2 of your top 8 videos. So top 8
You
videos
are.
by view count. Do you think there's something to that? Do you think that people like my face on the on the
I
thumbnail
think
there?
that's it. I think it's just your face.
Yeah.
That's the formula for
Good.
YouTube.
So we figured it out. We just know what to do next. Okay, so I have been looking forward to this for so long because your we have just been going all in on YouTube. Many of us have been. I know I have. Many of us in this room are. So in our larger membership called All Access, Arlan's All Access, that everybody here is part of, but this is a group that's outside of it. You can major in YouTube or major in memberships and
Okay.
major like the US universities, right? I'm majoring in this. And so we have a lot of people doing double majors, but then we have a lot of people just doing majoring in YouTube, just going all out there. So everyone here has been given your link to check out your page, check out your what you do. And we saw a video where you described, how YouTube has kind of changed your life.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So first of all, where are in the world are you? Because you're always in a different city when we talk.
Okay, so right now I'm in New Jersey.
Okay.
But typically I'm in New York, and typically I'm in Brooklyn in New York.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be back in New York tomorrow.
And do you live in New Jersey or New York? And then do you do most of your interviews still out of New York?
Yeah, so I live in Brooklyn. Most of the interviews are done in New York. We have 2 studios that we use. But to be honest, Arlen, and you know this, it's like I'm trying to get the best guests and share the best stories. And so I go wherever I need to go to make that happen. So last week I was in Tampa. A couple of weeks before that, I was in Atlanta. Um, and in a few weeks, I'm going to be in Austin.
Yeah.
Uh, and so
Yeah.
it's interesting when you even mention like how YouTube has changed my life because it has. Like 12, like 14 months ago, like I was living at home with my mom doing this.
Hmm.
And now, like, I've traveled all around the world doing YouTube. It's funny, actually, because even this morning, I was thinking about our conversation that we're having right now. And I was in my YouTube studio. I was just looking at some of the numbers and the statistics. And I started at zero. Like, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any crazy network. I didn't have anyone plug the channel. And since I've been doing this on YouTube, which is a little over, I'd say 2 years, over 1.1 million hours of watch time on our content, which is just insane. And I looked at I was like, what is that? Because it's hard for your brain to even conceptualize what
Yes.
1.1 million hours of someone watching your content is. That is 125 years of of people just watching your content. And
Well,
so
I now have to look up mine. I have to. But keep going. I'm going to look up mine while
we're
you're.
gonna get competitive right here, Arlen.
Well,
We're
no,
gonna
we can't. It's not competitive. Okay, so I have 306,000 hours of watch time, and I would say that's about 13 months worth.
yeah.
Um, wow. So I want to talk about competition. I want to talk about the early days, all of that. What does that mean to you when you see those types of numbers?
It's completely surreal.
Mm,
It's completely surreal to me. I always tell the origin story of the show. First of all, the show started off as an experiment. It wasn't like I never envisioned myself as like a podcaster or a YouTuber. I know a
yep.
lot of kids these days, like they're on TikTok and they see themselves being a creator. That was not my story at all. I would listen to podcasts, I would watch content on YouTube. I never thought that I would do it. At the time, and this is a few years ago, I had a business coach and she just recommended to me, she was like, you should just try doing 10 episodes of a podcast. And at the time, I think I'm like 23, 24. But one
And
thing,
you're at the ripe old age of what, 25, 26 now?
yeah, I'm 26. I'm about to turn 27,
Okay.
funnily enough,
Go ahead.
next month. But I remember when she told me that, I was like, we do not need another 23-year-old business life guru on the internet. Like, we have enough of those. And so I was deeply skeptical about putting myself out there in that way and doing a podcast. And I remember she said to me on the call, she was like, you know what? You don't even have to release it. Just record the 10 interviews, see how they go, and take it
Mm,
from there. And so
mm.
she took away my biggest objection. And so I was like, fine, you know what? I'll just do this thing. We'll see how it goes. And I'll try and get it over with as quickly as possible. And
Mhm.
so I would reach out to these entrepreneurs that I admired, that I would see on Twitter posting or on Instagram, and I would send them cold emails. And I'd be shocked because I'd wake up the next day and there'd be responses.
Yeah.
And I tell people at this time, I'm like, we didn't even have a name for the show. Like, obviously, the show is now the Callum Johnson show, but like at the time, we didn't even have a name. So I was like inviting people onto something which wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a name to it. And, I think one of the really early conversations that we had was with this entrepreneur called Ruben Harris, who's running a tech company out of Atlanta. At the time, they just raised a $40 million Series B round.
With
Uh,
me involved.
oh, okay, nice. I didn't even mean for that
I've
to
been
happen.
invested in Ruben for 7 years,
Yeah,
multiple rounds. Yeah.
Ruben's awesome, and he's like, I feel like he sees into the future. Like he thinks a lot about vision and where
Yeah.
things are going. But at the time, it was completely surreal to me that he would speak with me. Like they just raised this $40 million Series B round. He was on like CNBC and all these business shows talking about it. And then he was also talking to me. And I remember we had an interview, it was on a Friday. And at these times, I used to do like 3 or 4 interviews in a day. And so he was the last one in that day, and I was completely exhausted. And I remember a few minutes before we get on the call, I'm just like, all of the early doubts are coming back to me of like, why am I doing this? Like, why does he want to talk with me? Just feeling that imposter syndrome around putting out the show. And honestly, like, I hit record, I get into the meeting with him. And it was similar to when you and I spoke, Arlen. It was just like, we just clicked. And I remember before I knew it, an hour was done. And I get off the call and I remember being full of so much energy, like feeling like I could run through a wall. And it was the first time in my working life where I had gone into doing the thing, doing the work, tired, and left it with a ton of energy. I was only used to having that experience in reverse of turning up to the office and you kind of feel good because it's the morning and you've just woken up and you feel all right. And then you leave the office and you feel dead tired and you need to watch Netflix to like make yourself feel better or kind of numb the experience. And so that was the moment that I knew I was in the right place. And since then, it's just been like, just being consistent, just keep doing the thing. And so we've done over 100 episodes at this point. But yeah, it started, that recording was in my younger sister's bedroom. It was on a grainy Mac webcam. There was no audience, there was no name for the show. And now, yeah, now we're at the point where, we have over 125,000 subscribers. We're about to hit 7 million downloads, uh,
Mm.
1.1 million hours of watch time. So, yeah, small things can become big things.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. We are doing a big experiment with my YouTube channel where every episode we're going to see how many people we can get to subscribe so that we can get this out to more and more people who need to hear it. YouTube really cares when more people subscribe to a certain video. And when you subscribe, it sends it out to more people who are like you. So if you're getting any value out of this video and you want to help with my experiment, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already, and we'll get back to the episode. That's amazing. So you have more than 100 videos.
Yeah,
Your videos, the shortest one, if they're an interview, is what, an hour?
an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, the shortest is an hour. I would like to do a little back and forth on discussing the decision to be an interviewer because I've interviewed a thousand people. I don't know, hundreds of people, and I've done a lot of it. I've done audio podcasts. I started this YouTube channel as a video interview series with Jenny Smollett, and we just kept going from there. What when you go out, are you recognized physically? And then what do you want to be recognized for? That individualism. So that's the thing that I ran into with doing interviews was that I didn't know if I could get enough of my message out to the world.
Mm.
So how do you think about those two things? Those are two different questions, but I do, I think they kind of relate.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. I think yes, I do get recognized. What do I get recognized for? People will tell me about the episodes they watched.
Hmm.
Um, and to be honest, to give context, like in the beginning, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to do something that I loved, that felt like my calling. I didn't have a message. Like I didn't know what my message was.
Yeah.
I think that's a relatable, the reason I bring that up is I think that's a relatable thing for people. It's like sometimes like where you want to go and the thing you want to be doing and the energy of it. You don't know
Hmm.
exactly what it looks like. And so that was definitely for me in the beginning. With where I'm at now, it actually kind of works perfectly because I think even though the show is called The Callum Johnson Show, I don't see it as being all about me. I see it as being I have this like belief in human potential and what I think that people can do. And I think beautiful things happen in the world when people truly believe in their own potential and what they're capable of, and then start to work against that. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to share stories of people that went through that process. And so like for you, Arlen, like you're a perfect example of it, right? When we did the episode over a year ago now, which is crazy to even think about. Uh,
Yeah, it was right around it was January 2024. Has more than what, 400,000 views now or
yeah,
reaching that? Hmm.
yeah. And we started off that conversation speaking about how at one point you were, sleeping on in an airport floor in San Francisco. Homeless and sleeping on the floor of that San Francisco airport. Give me the context of that time. What was happening?
That was 2015, and I had experienced different types of homelessness my whole adult life. Had a pretty chaotic upbringing, great family, but we moved a lot and we didn't have money. And I had some really special times and great times, so I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. But through a series of events, I found myself with no place to live, very little money. And if I had money, it was by the day. It was like I had that money for that day to get that food, on the dollar menu. And I thought, if if I'm going to be homeless, I think if I were to live outside on the concrete, I think that would be so rock bottom for me that I don't know if I would be able to bounce.
And for me, that's like there's so many incredible things that you've done, but that part of the conversation is so key because I want the people that watch to feel like if she could do it, I could do it. I
Mhm.
want that relatability. And that's really, I think, is one of the things that like sets the show apart is we're very intentional about how do we create that relatability between the viewer and the guest. And the reason why is because as soon as you see yourself in the guest story, just naturally the thought in your mind is I could do that thing too, right? Like I could start that multi-million dollar venture fund. I could be speaking on stages. I could have a huge YouTube. Whatever the thing is, I want people to believe that they can do it.
Yeah.
So I think, funnily enough, like when people come up to me, that's what they talk about. Oh, I watched this episode with this woman and this is what she had done. And
Yeah, yeah. So
people,
you're curating this this goal, and over time, I said this to you what, a year ago. I said this to you a year ago, first in our emails, and then when I was in person with you, I think, and definitely on camera afterwards, that the thing that made me want to do the interview when I was releasing my book and I had not heard of you, you know, and I was on my way to ABC News right after yours, or if you don't know if you remember that. But the thing that made me to do it was that it wasn't that you had just had like your first viral video come out, which we'll talk about, but it was the fact that when I looked at your channel, when I scrolled down to the bottom, your interviews that were on Zoom, and this is when I wasn't even doing my Zoom interviews yet, or Zoom videos yet. Your interviews on Zoom were, in my opinion, as well prepared and researched and respected by you as the ones that were in the studio, and as that one that I saw that had become a viral hit. And if I had just seen the viral hit, I don't think I would have said yes, because I would have been like, I got 10 of these requests. So I don't know how we physically can do it in the time.
Hmm,
But when I saw that, I was like, oh no, he's about to, there's something, you can see it. You know what I mean? Like game recognized game. Like you can see it. Like
yeah,
when somebody is hungry
yeah.
for this. What were your original monetary aspirations for the channel?
Original? Like when I
Like
first
you
started,
first started, like be honest, like when you first started, because you did quit your job to do this. So you must have thought, I can attempt to make a living. And was Stephen Bartlett at all on your mind when you started with your British
okay,
self?
okay. Okay, that's a few questions. Okay,
Yeah.
let me go
Well,
through.
yeah, I mean, what was it? What was the original thought about money?
So you'll see like the t-shirt it says stay delusional. That's
Yeah,
like
that's your
that's
mark.
the merch and the brand that we're going with. That is really my mindset. And so I think sometimes when I say things in the beginning, it's like, how did you think that way? Um, but I did. So the show, so next month it'll be the 3-year anniversary of the show.
Hmm.
The beginning when it started, like I mentioned, it was an experiment. So I wasn't even thinking about money. I was thinking like if I put this out, will 50 people watch? Like, will anyone listen to this thing? Like right in the beginning. I think so 3 years ago is when I first started. The first year of me doing the show, I was doing it on the side as I was working a full-time job. So I guess if you took it from like when I quit my job, what was my money aspiration? I was in a very fortunate position where like I had like a bit, I had savings saved up and I was able to move out of New York and live with my mum, like my parents, for a year and just go on this thing.
Hmm.
So we weren't like I would do things on the side, like I would sell like podcast consulting or like, we're gonna help you with your production or your marketing of your podcast. Like I figured out the stuff on the side, so I had enough money coming in that I could just keep doing this. But honestly, like this is always the way that my mind's worked, is I've always gone off gut instinct. And so I knew from when I did that episode with Ruben Harris, I was like, this is the thing that I've been searching for.
Mhm.
Like I spent so much time, people talk about their calling and all of this, uh, these sort of things. And I'd spent so much time like searching for mine. And so I knew just off the feeling, I knew off the gut instinct, I was like, oh, this is it. And so for me, as soon as I felt that, I was like, this is the right direction to go. I'm just going to start going there.
Yeah.
And it sounds, I don't know, it might sound crazy or delusional, but as I went on that path and continued pursuing that path with like 100% intent, things just opened up at the right time.
Hmm.
And so like we we just broke six figures as a company this year, like just the year that went by. That's like
Congratulations.
crazy to me to imagine. I remember writing notes of when I quit my job of like, I don't even know, I've never made really money off the internet or like putting something on the internet, like online entrepreneurship. Like it was crazy for me to envision that I would make $10,000 doing this. And so it's been one of those journeys of like just consistently doing the work and trying to take the right next step every time. And then it's opened up a new level at each phase of that process. On the Stephen Bartlett thing, we get like I hear a lot of comparisons to Stephen Bartlett, and I have a huge amount of respect for what he does. Like he is incredible, and his team and the infrastructure he's built is incredible. Again, when I first started the show, I'm this goes back to the stay delusional thing. I grew up very competitive. So like I have an older brother, he's 8 years older than me. And so growing up in the UK in London, we used to play in the back garden and we would just play football every day. And he's 8 years older than me, so he'd always win. And I'd
Wow.
come back the next day and the next day and the next day. And so I just grew up very competitive. And so from when, like, one of the promises I made to myself after we did the first episode with Ruben, I was like, I want to be one of the best that's ever done this. So, in terms of like thinking specifically about Steven, I think that probably came like later. We
Hmm.
definitely took inspiration from what he's done. But in terms of like envisioning and having, I guess, delusional mindset around like being the best, that was from like as soon as I knew that this was my thing.
Colin is dropping gem after gem after gem. I love this conversation so much. I'm so happy that we get to bring it to you, that everybody agreed that we could show it publicly. I want to make sure that you are having a good time and you're learning from this. Let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaways are. Let me know if you want me to do more episodes like this, where I talk about YouTube, where we do these deep dives. If this is helping you, if this is valuable, let me know in the comments right now. We'll get right back to the conversation. Yeah. Well, you can see the comparison. You're a black British dude who, or you have a British accent, who interviews people in in-depth interviews, very well prepared for it. You even at one point had trailers like his, right? So it's like you saw something that was working and you're like, I can do my version of this. And your version of it is it's very much so about helping people with their businesses and their kind of life mindset, where Stevens is more about now, at least, like health and wellness and
Yeah.
alternatives and that kind of thing. So I'm gonna when we talk about like behind the scenes numbers, when you
Mhm.
check your YouTube dashboard, what is that number? Like, okay, first of all, when you release a video, do you have a CTR, click-through rate, or a number of views in the first hour that you know, okay, this is going to perform the way I need it to perform?
Yeah. Oh, we're getting technical now. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
let,
that's
let's
what we're
dig
doing.
into it. I think so. The answer is like it's kind of a balance, right? Because we've had videos on YouTube, you're trying to balance CTR, you're also trying to balance the impressions. And
Mm.
so sometimes you'll have a really high CTR on a video. That's not a good thing. because
Mm,
it's like YouTube is showing your video to such a small audience of people that are basically like they're the people that are gonna love your content anyway. And so it
mm,
looks like you have this, oh, my CTR is 12%, 13%. What's the problem? It's like, well, yeah, but also the way you've positioned it, it's not positioned to reach a broad audience of people. And so I think though, if I'm speaking generally, typically in the first hour, the way that the YouTube algorithm works is I almost think about it. I don't even know if I like the analogy of like an onion. So like it will show it to like a small subsection of people, like a sample of people that it thinks will really like your content in the first hour. And then if it does really well with them, then it will start slowly expanding it out, showing it to broader and broader audiences. And so what you'll see is actually when you have a video that's going viral, a lot of the times the CTR is actually starting to come down because
mhm.
it's hitting such broad audiences that wouldn't traditionally be like know who you are or like be interested in your videos, um, that naturally the CTR comes down. And so I think though in the first hour we look for the CTR to be like 8, 9%, like really high. And then over time, I would say like after like a day or so, 2, 3 days, we look for it to be around like 6 to 7%.
Yep.
That kind of shows that we're in like a really nice range. But like I say, I'm also paying attention to the impressions, like how the impressions is how many people is YouTube showing your video to?
Hmm.
Because you need both. When
Yeah,
you have a lot of impressions and a good CTR, that's when you have a killer of a video. Like that's when the video is gonna go.
absolutely. Yeah. We just had one last Wednesday that picked up, I think it's at 13,000 subscribers that it picked up for me,
Oh, that's incredible. Okay.
250,000 views, and it has less than 3 million impressions, which is a lot of impressions for me. But my largest video has 6 million impressions and has a lower CTR even at that stage. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that tail looks like, like the 3 months from now, what that looks like. Because it is a lot, has a lot to do with what happens in the first hour, the first 24 hours, the first week. But then, I'll have a video that did well the first few days, but kind of forgot about it. I come back and I'm looking at the analytics section of the dashboard, and I'm looking at the top three videos for the last 48 hours, and all of a sudden it's appearing.
Yeah.
And it's because YouTube, the algorithm has swept it up again. And now it's just like, a hockey stick when it comes to views. And you could take a look at that and you're like, why? Like 30 days later, 70 days later, why did it decide to just take off?
Yeah.
That's what's so exciting to me. I mean, I am all in on YouTube. I
Yeah.
like wake up to YouTube. My wife now understands YouTube is a part of our life now, She was the
Yeah.
YouTuber when we first met, which is funny. But you start to see these patterns and things. And do you have, like, when you see a video on your channel and it has, let's say it has 10,000 views versus 300,000 views,
Yeah.
do you question that, or do you say it's more important that the entire, like the day-to-day numbers or something, or like, how do you measure success for the channel holistically?
Yeah. You know what? That's a good point. I'm gonna answer that just
Yeah.
quickly because I thought your point before was so good as well about like, yes, sometimes the early performance really does matter and is the story, but then there's also other cases where like you will have videos that you posted 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, just start to crush and just start to go. And sometimes it's like a lesson. We had that recently. And it's like a lesson to me of like, don't be so overreactive in
Mm,
that initial period of a video going live that you start making all these changes or God forbid you delete it or you do
yeah.
something that's like drastic not knowing that 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line, that video could be the one that goes. And it's really just like an interesting thing that I thought about maybe a month or so ago. I went to this little like creator meetup thing at Gary Vaynerchuk's offices in New York. And he brought together like a bunch of creators. And I like grew up watching Gary Vaynerchuk. So it's like surreal to me that I'm even sitting in the office. And I'm talking with the different creators that are there. And a lot of them are on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on these sorts of platforms. And there is like, I tell people, YouTube really is like the golden goose when it comes to social media and this whole content game. Like, I was one of the only people, I think I was the only person that did like long form YouTube content.
Mhm.
And other creators and creators that have built platforms on or built audiences on other platforms are jealous of what the YouTubers have because YouTube is really an incredible platform. And I'm not like, I don't get paid by YouTube.
Well, you do.
Well, I do, but not directly. Well, I guess I do
Yeah,
actually.
no, you when you find something that works, you want more people to know about it.
Yeah. And I think really what YouTube does better than I think YouTube just does it at such an elite level is they pair audience and content. And that sounds like simple and straightforward, but once you start to understand of like, if I can create the right content that is designed for a specific type of person, the YouTube algorithm, and it might be in an hour or a day or 3 months, they're going to pair that content with that person. And so if my content is right, I have the potential to reach millions of people and to change my life based off one video. Because even for me, like we've had a number of videos go now, but it started with one video, right? I tell people this, if like 18 months ago doing the channel, we would get like 100 views an episode. And then we got one that got 800,000.
Mm.
It really is one video, and that's the power of the platform. Remind me your question because I want to make sure I
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely, I'm so happy that you said that because I think that when everyone here has had some measure of success in their businesses and their lives, they're doing well, but a lot of people are new to YouTube.
yeah.
And my hope for everybody here is that if you do decide to use it, or if maybe we're helping to convince you to, that it just takes everything you're doing to another level
Mm,
because you already have such a foundation and you have so much to share that do we want just a few people to know about it or do we want an unlimited amount of people to know? My other question was, and I had to write it down because I'm 44, could be his mother, is how do you measure the success holistically? You kind of touched on it now, like you really did. Like, but how do you, I guess it's less about it will pick up, at some point. But is it like, do you say to yourself, I want a certain number of views per week or per day or per month, rather than that individual asset has to break today?
I'm gonna give two answers. The because the answer is that it evolves kind of like as you just progress as a creator and as you get more involved. Honestly, when I began, I didn't think a ton about like views or downloads. The funny thing for me, like I had tried to start businesses when I was younger, and I would never stick with them. I would always, I'd get really excited. I'd be like really intense about like these t-shirt lines and things that I'd try and start. And then after about a few months, I would kind of burn out and I wouldn't do it anymore. And I think the really great thing about how I approached the podcast and YouTube, it was really just one big experiment to me. Like
Mhm.
I was just trying stuff.
Have you heard that word before, everybody?
Uh, yeah, I love the word experiment. Like everything,
So that's
everything
what
with
I,
everything.
that's what I just preach in these programs is people see success happen
Yeah.
and they think that there's a big formula for it, or that you reach a certain level of success and you everything just you just do everything calculated.
Mm,
The most successful people I know, including myself, experiment daily.
mm.
That's how we get the success.
Yeah.
And so it's a little frustrating for people because they're like, oh, you're holding something back, or there's this formula that works. Yeah, there are 8 things if you know about YouTube, you'll do better than others. But really, it comes down to like our minds are blown when these videos take off because we're like, oh, that one did, not that one. That one I thought was gonna, has so much value, but that one took off, and it's a whole thing. But continue, please.
Yeah. And just to add to your point, like I tell people, I feel like I'm very fortunate and I have a very unique seat because, doing the interviews, I get to speak with at this point like over 100 entrepreneurs who in what they do are incredibly successful. Like people that have built seven-figure, eight-figure businesses. I just had a conversation last week with Myron Golden, who's
Mhm.
built an incredibly successful business. And one of the things you just having that number of conversations with a certain type of person, you start to pick up on patterns, right? All of these people have different businesses, different ways that they made their money and their success and different stories. But you start to pick up on certain principles and patterns. And one of the things that I picked up on pretty early is they have a really strong bias to action. And I think it feeds into that mindset of seeing things as an experiment, which is like, they're not some of them are really smart, but for the majority of them, it's not that they're like geniuses or
I
whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yes.
but they go from the idea to testing it really fast. And I think that they understand that like it's not really the whole game is figuring out what works for you, right? Like, and so what worked on my channel, yes, there's like lessons that you can take, but like you're really trying to figure out what's going to work on your channel. And so the only way to really do that is that you have to have that experimenter's mindset of like, okay, I tried this. So with this video, we went with this sort of intro and this thumbnail and this type of title, and we got this result and this sort of guest. And then a couple weeks later, we tried it with a different type of guest and a different thumbnail and a different style of title, and we got 5x that result. And then you're like, okay, we're going to go all in on this style. That's how we came up with we've changed our thumbnail template
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
times. It
It's
was through experimentation. Like I had a certain style of thumbnail, and there was someone, my editor just took it upon himself to make like a different style of thumbnail, and he sent it to me, and I was like, nah, we don't need to do that. We already have a thumbnail style.
hmm
And then a few days went by and the video's not performing. And I'm like, okay, like, why don't I just throw up the one that he did? And then I woke up the next evening or the next morning and the video had like 5x the number of views. And I was like, oh, we should be doing that style.
Yep.
That was no genius or like, really skill level on my part. That was just experimenting, trying things out. And you start to realize like anyone that's been successful in any field, that's their mindset.
Yeah.
That they come up with a thesis, which is like an idea or a theory of what they think will work. They then test it really fast. They get a result back. And based on that result, they either go all in on it or make another slight shift, try something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Constant game of trying to like one up yourself. That's how you become great at something. Uh,
Yeah. Isn't this amazing? Like this interview with Callum was just so, so good. He's going to get into some questions from the audience, and it's just going to get better and better and better. Before we get going again, make sure you are subscribed. If you're watching this on TV, just push the up button, the arrow button, and subscribe to this channel. If you're watching it on your phone, hi, how are you doing? Push that subscribe button and get this out to more people and help me with my big experiment to grow this channel as big as can be. Also, let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaway is so far. If you've made it this far, let me know. I want to open this up to everyone because this is what really makes these masterminds really special. It's like getting people's questions either about Callum's channel or about your channel.
This idea of interviewer as like my YouTube niche, let's call it, is landing with me in a really strong way. So it's mostly a general question about like what are some of your top tips if that's a way that I would like to start, because I find the me talking straight to camera is far harder for me to feel generative. I've done that. And then I just kind of like, all right, I'll batch record a few videos. I'll push this out. And then it's like, wah. Whereas in dialogue, there's so much more aliveness. So how do you prepare? How do you source your guests? Does it matter that they have big reach or audience of their own? Like those are some of the ideas that are floating around in here, but mostly I would just love to hear your tips, please and thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that's a great question. You know, one of the pieces of advice, I remember I would hear this a lot in the like when I was starting out, or even before I started out. When it comes to content, people always talk about being consistent. And it's like, you know it's true when you hear it, but it's like frustrating to hear because you're like, it's not really helpful, like, oh, just be consistent and that's what it will work. I think it is good advice, but I kind of take the meaning of it slightly different, which is in order to be consistent, you need to find something that feels pretty easy or like it adds energy to you when you do it. And so when I
Mhm.
started, that was my whole mindset when it came to like what style of content to do is what can I specifically produce which feels easy and like native for me. And so if you knew me at that time or if you just know me period, I've always been like super curious and I love asking people questions. So that was like I really didn't overthink the interviewer thing at all. And if anything, a lot of people would tell me like if you want to grow to be like a creator, doing like interviews isn't probably the best way to do it, but I knew it was what was easy for me. It was the thing that I could do consistently because some
Mhm.
people will do, I don't know, like more talking head style, or they'll go out on the street and do like street interviews or whatever. But like, if that's not natural to you and your personality, maybe you can brute force it for a month, but like, you're not going to be successful at this in a month. You're going to be successful at it after a period of time. And so I really optimized for the thing that felt easy for me to do. I just wanted to say that as like a context.
Love it.
In terms of kind of my approach to it, my approach has really like shifted over time. So I'll give you guys the full context, which is in the beginning, my preparation was really led by my curiosity. So I would reach out to people that I wanted to speak to. I didn't really I don't know. I'd pay attention to the names, but like I didn't focus on only going for like famous people or people with followings. I just followed my natural curiosity. And I would ask myself that question. I'm like, do I really want to speak to this person? Like if I knew no one was going to watch, like if it was just me and that person in a room, do I want to have the conversation with them? And
Mm.
so once the answer was yes, it's like the preparation process becomes pretty seamless because then you're just further exploring the curiosity. You're like, oh, okay, like what is it about them that I'm interested in? Well, like for me, a lot of the times I love going into people's like early journey, like the early parts of their stories where they're like more relatable to people. And so then I just start doing research on like that period of their life. I start watching other podcast interviews that they've done. I watch like not watch, I read they've done like blog posts or like articles. I go to their Twitter account and I look at their most popular tweets. Like the if when you're and this goes back into like the experimenter's mindset when you're being led by curiosity, it clears up a lot of questions because it's like you don't really have to think about, okay, what's my process or what am I going to do? You're just following that thread that interests you, like the thing that interested you to begin with. And so for me, that was really my process in the beginning. I think now it's shifted somewhat because we have like an audience. And so I have an awareness of like what sort of topics or like things that I know that they want. Like I still create for myself, but I also create for an audience. And so that comes into my thinking. And I think very intentionally, it was actually a big part of what I tell people is like the first 20 months or so of doing the show, we got around 30,000 downloads. Then in the last kind of 14 months, we've gotten 7 million. And so people always ask like what was the shift, like what changed. I think one of the big things that we started to do differently is I think very intentionally about the viewer avatar, is what I call it, which is like, who is the human being that's meant to watch this content? And I use the word human being like very intentionally because it's like, I don't know, I want to know like what is their background? Like what's their mindset? Like what are their desires? What's holding them back? How old are they? Where do they grow up? Like where do they live? Where do they want to be in a year or 2 years? I think very intentionally about who is meant to watch this before I've even had the conversation with the guest. Because I think the best products and the best content, it feels when you're experiencing it, it feels like it was made just for you. And so for me, I'm like, I go into all of my episodes with a clear person in mind. And my team think I'm kind of crazy for doing this. Like, I'll give them a name. Like, we're recording on Tuesday, I'll be like, Derek is the viewer avatar for this. And then I'll literally write out a paragraph where I'm describing everything about Derek. I'm like, this is what he's into, this is what he's looking for, this is the problem in his life. I think very intentionally about who is meant to watch this. And the more specific I can be, the better. Because I want when that person does watch it, they're like, oh, this was made for me. Like I was meant to watch this. That's phenomenal content, in my opinion.
I'll just jump right to this one where you left off. You talked about the set of questions that you asked after researching your guests. Do you ask the same set of questions per guest, or each guest gets a different set of questions?
No, I think, to be honest, the thing I'll say is like, as a creator and as you get deeper into the process, you'll figure out what works for you. There are huge channels that like they script out the questions or they have like a very set idea of like what the questions will be. That's not my thing. I have like an idea. Honestly, with where I'm at now, more what I planned beforehand is like the story arc of an episode.
Okay.
Which sounds kind of weird given what I do, but like I think very intentionally about like storytelling and like what's the story arc of the guest. And so I will plan that out. In terms of like what the actual questions are, I don't like to script any of the questions. And I think the reason why is like, and this is just me, this is what has worked for me. I always want to caveat what I say with that. Because you'll have to figure out what's going to work specifically for you. But like, I see what I do as like a craft. Like it's like the craft of conversation, and I love that craft. Like that's the thing. Like the way that like LeBron James plays basketball, and like that's his craft. Or I don't know what Barack Obama would say. Maybe like public speaking or whatever. Like that's their
Communication.
craft. I see my craft as conversation, and so because I view it like that, I want to be in the moment. I want to
Mhm.
be like you have an idea of what you want to achieve, but I don't want it to be fully scripted or too strategic. I want it to be that I'm in that moment and I'm present and I'm listening to the guest. Because the best moments in your show are gonna come spontaneously, in my opinion. It's gonna come unexpected. It's gonna come because you said something to the guest, and then as you were observing them give an answer, you could tell that they got a bit emotional when they were talking about a specific thing. And then like your instinct for the craft is going to be like, okay, let me just follow up a bit more on that thread because there was something meaningful there. And then that's when you're going to have this like magical moment on camera or on for the recording or for the audience. And so I try not to go into it too scripted because I don't want to miss things in the moment because I'm too in my head trying to remember like what was the question I was
Mhm.
meant to ask. It's like, nah, like the conversation will naturally give you the threads that you're meant to follow up on. And so I want to be in the moment to like capitalize on that.
Let me follow up there too. I don't know. Was it always like that, Callum? Because my reason of asking that is I always say don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. So sometimes I wonder if you're just starting, does it make sense to have more bullet points and have more of an idea, and then you develop that gift that you have?
You know what's funny? I think because like I don't know. Once you find the thing that you're meant to be doing, it kind of becomes. I remember actually, I did an episode a couple weeks ago, and a guest told me this because she's a business coach, and she's like, a lot of the time she'll have clients come to her with like business ideas, and she'll listen to more of their stories, and she's like, you shouldn't be working on this thing. You should actually be working on this completely different thing. And that ends up being what they do, and they're successful at it. And I remember as we're doing the interview, she tells me, she's like, your calling will kind of follow you around in life. So like once you find it, is like in hindsight, it was like obvious. It was like, wait, I was exhibiting this trait, or like this was my calling in everything. Like the way that I speak with my friends, the way that I am with my family, the way that the one part of my job that I enjoy is like tied to your calling. Like it's everywhere. And so for me, funny enough to your point, Arlen, like the very first episodes we did, I came in with like lists of questions because I was like, okay, I felt nervous and I just wanted to feel prepared.
Yeah.
But like I would ask the first question and then I would like stop looking at the list and it wasn't intentional. It's just like I love conversation. So I naturally just started like they would answer the first question on my list, and then I was like, I actually have another question based off their answer, which has nothing to do with these other questions. And so it just got discarded. So to my point, it's like the way that I am, it kind of naturally led to not planning questions.
Yeah. So it's
Uh,
going to be different for everyone, I think. I mean, I really don't like to be prepped for an interview. And if I'm being interviewed, uh, all of your first million live, there was not one question that I used. In fact, I was handed questions by Issa Rae's team. And there's video footage of us backstage where I was like, as we were walking out, I was like, your team gave me questions, and I said, but I'm not going to ask any of them. And she said, I wouldn't, wouldn't care, like let's go. And like, but that is just like such a natural thing. But it's almost like you're saying, if it requires questions to be like a full script, that it may not be your calling. Is that, it's almost like you're saying that, like it look for something that's more natural and more flows better, right? But what do you do to find that? You experiment.
and the thing also I like to tell people is like and you mentioned it of like don't compare someone else's like step 20 to your step one. And to add to that, it's like things evolve over time, like naturally. Like you evolve in how you show up. I remember like when the show started, I tell people this. My first name for the show was the questionnaire, and like that was the what I thought would be the name of the podcast. And the reason behind that was is kind of corny when I think about it now. The second name for the show was Behind the Thread. And then, like, maybe like I would say a little over a year in, we got to the Callum Johnson show, which like I don't envision it changing because it's my name, but I think it just serves the point of like things change over time. So how you start is not what it looks like at all a year later. And so I went in, like I said, like I went into the first interview with a list of questions because I was nervous. Like I wanted to have like, oh, what if there's like a break or it gets awkward or something? I want to have something I can fall back into. Um, and so there's nothing wrong with that. I think honestly, it's like the most simple advice, but it's the most valuable if you apply it, is like just getting started and having that bias to action. Because naturally, if you're taking action and you're thinking about, okay, how can I improve with each iteration, which is something that Mr. Beast says, which is like, I remember early on watching this interview with Mr. Beast, who he's like the biggest creator, right? Like, I think he has over 100 million subscribers.
300 million more. Yeah, more than
Okay,
300 million, I think.
300 million. Uh,
Yeah.
And someone asks him, they're like, "Oh, like how can someone get to like 1 million subscribers on YouTube if they're starting from zero?" And he says, "I give people this advice every time. They never follow it, but the people that do, it's worked every time, which is just produce, like just make 1,000 videos. And every time you make a video, choose one thing about that video that you want to improve and improve it. And do that." And he's like, usually they never even have to get to 1,000. They have 1 million subscribers by like 200. But just that mindset of like, just start doing the thing and then publish it. And then every time you publish, choose one thing to improve about the video, improve it on the next one, and just keep following that cycle. And before you know it, you will look up and you will have the 100,000. Like I tell people, like 14 months ago, we had 500 subscribers on the channel, and we just passed 126,000 subscribers. So, like, yeah, like a lot of the stuff that you're doing in the beginning is not what you're going to be doing 100 videos in. But it's like, if it gets you going in the beginning, just do it. Whatever is needed to get you started and feel good about it, do it. And things will naturally evolve from there in the right way.
I'm going to start YouTube from zero, and I'm going to start it with a creative project that we've only had 3 meetings. I'm a filmmaker. And so I guess my question is, what feels really fun about it now, and the reason I'm doing the project for free, is that the actor said he would meet me in person for all these like brainstorming sessions. And I was like, okay, you buy me breakfast and we're in person, let's go. And it's been so fun. And I want that fun to be, I want to keep that alive while I'm filming us. So I'm just like, do I just bring a camera into Cafe Gratitude? I don't think I probably can do that. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Why did you say I'm thankful? Yes.
I'm grateful
I'm
for my
grateful.
cameras. Please leave us alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I guess I want to get started as quickly as possible. I don't want to give myself a bunch of perfectionistic roadblocks. So my question is, would you just set up a camera and start? Would you play with like one camera, seeing but like a talk showy format versus two cameras? Arlen's shaking her head. Okay.
I'll shut
up.
You're a filmmaker. So I would do like I think of, there are very few people who are interesting enough for vlogs, in my opinion. But I think like a documentary of your process, and then you have like an editor friend, or you do it yourself.
Yeah.
Like edit these 12-minute episodes or these 30-minute episodes of just this process over time, because YouTube is going so far into the series. They care about series. They're trying to compete with Netflix when it comes to that. So if you have something that you're a filmmaker, so have something that kind of has like a cliffhanger, and then it's going to the next, and that could simply be on your iPhone. You probably know this. I found this out from my brother, who's documented me on my book tour for months last year, is you can download the free Blackmagic camera app.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
So the Blackmagic camera, beautiful camera, but you can download the app for it for free, and you learn a couple of settings on it, and you can actually have that 4K cinematic feel on your cameras. And we use it all the time. We got rid of the expensive cameras, and they just use two iPhones with that Blackmagic on it. So that can kind of just give you that feel to it. And I would, talking about your calling, and I would lean into what sets you apart. And yes, you could do an interview style, but this will set you apart because you have the friends and the creativity to do that.
I think Arlen gave such a great like tactical answer. I'm gonna take it a slightly different way, which is like, I would just turn the question around to you and be like, what's easy for you to produce? And like that's a lot of the times, because a lot of the time, and this is what I feel personally, even with what I'm doing, is a lot of these things I'm doing it for the first time. And so when you're doing something for the first time, it's like you don't have experience to fall back on. Like you don't know some of these things, you don't know the answer to. And so when I come across something where I'm like, what do I do? I'm caught between two different things. I'll just ask myself like a hypothetical question. Like if I just wanted to make this easy, what would I do? And typically when I ask myself a hypothetical question, an answer will immediately pop up in my mind. I'll be like, okay, well, I'd probably do it like this, and then I'll just do that. Like, because I think in the important thing in the beginning is is to get started. And the other thing with content, and this isn't just content, this is actually just people in general. People like things when they can tell that the person involved is interested, is like excited about it. I remember I was having dinner last week with Myron Golden, and he has nearly 1 million subscribers on YouTube and very successful in his business and career as well. And he's saying to me, he's like, I think I figured out content. Like I figured out like what makes someone really successful in content and what makes someone it never really gets going for them. He said the best content creators are interested. And I'm like, what? He's like, they're not interesting. They're not trying to be interesting. They're interested. And I'm still not really quite getting it. And he's like, whatever the thing that they're talking about, or like for me doing interviews, going back to the curiosity point, they are just so interested in this thing that they're doing. And that excitement and that interest level, that is what is translating to the camera and translating to the audience. And that's what people are feeling. And so that's why I would turn it around to you. I just say, what's like easy for you to produce? And what would be exciting for you to produce? And whatever the answer to those is, I would make that.
Okay.
That's the thing that has the highest likelihood of succeeding.
How do you balance what you want to create for your own creativity and art and what works, quote unquote, for the algorithm, your audience?
So we had our first viral episode in November of 2023. And I remember, so that one got like 800,000, over 800,000 people watched that one. And then after that, I started to travel a lot for the show. And so I remember there was this period where I went to Miami to record, I went to Atlanta, I went to London, I went to LA. I was in Your First Million Live in LA like a year ago. And I remember one of the things I had to be very honest. I had this very honest moment with myself where I was watching an interview between Ali Abdaal and Colin and Samir.
Yep.
Um, they make great videos on content creation. And one of the things I remember Colin and Samir talking about this, they said that there's a difference between an artist and a creator. And I remember when they said it, I was like, I was cleaning the kitchen of the apartment that I was staying in at the time, and I like stopped because I was like, okay, I feel like this is something that I need to hear right now. And they said there's a difference between an artist and a creator. An artist makes what they believe is great art. A creator makes great art for an audience. And so what that means is it's like an artist, they're just producing stuff that they love. They don't really, they don't really mind if like no one sees it. They just want to make something that's beautiful to them, something that's authentic and speaks to them, and it's an expression of who they are. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Like to just produce great art is incredible. The creator is slightly nuanced, right? Like a creator, you're creating great art for an audience. You're creating something that you think is great, but you also want people to watch it. Like you want it to be consumed. And so one of the things that's really important at a certain point of when you're doing YouTube is to understand like, what am I optimizing for? Like, do I want to be an artist or do I want to be a creator? If you want to be an artist, it's like just record what you're doing and just put it out, and anything that comes back to you is like a bonus. Um, it's like that extra topping, like the extra sprinkles at the end. If you want to be a creator, that's when you have to really start to understand the nuances of YouTube, right? Understand how, what are the intros that hook people in the beginning? What is the thumbnails and the titles that are like trending in your niche? And like you have to start doing some of those more creator type things to understand the game of YouTube. But I think to Arlen's point, it's like that is an incredibly important thing I don't think you need to know it right in the beginning. But I think there will come a point where it's like important to be honest about, do you want to be an artist or do you want to be a creator? And the answer to that question will govern a lot of how you act, or a lot of how you proceed.
Where do you want to see things in the future? Do you have that in your mind, or are you like, who knows what'll happen next?
Like I say, I remember when I first did the show, my goal in the first year was like, I just wanted 10,000 people to watch what we did. And actually, we didn't even achieve that in the first year. I was looking back at the metrics. The very first year of doing it, we got 6,000 downloads. That's where it started. Like last year in 2024, we got 6 million downloads. And then I want to hit 60 million downloads. So that's like the very like quantifiable number of where I want to go. Honestly, though, like more than just the media and the views, it's like I just want to have a certain impact. I remember I was telling someone this recently. I want to create life-changing content. Like I want it that for the people that watch, they almost felt like there's two periods in their life. There's like everything that happened before, they watched a certain episode, and then everything that happened afterwards. And it was like, whether it was a realization, whether it was a story that the guest shared, whether it was an emotional moment, I want them to feel like this content, this video that I watched fundamentally changed the way that I'm thinking about something. Um, and the reason for that is like that's my life story. Like I've had certain interviews that I've watched. I remember watching an interview with Navar Ravikant and Tim Ferriss. And it was when I was in my first ever job, which was in consulting, and I was miserable. And I remember watching that interview and some of the things that he shared. And a week later, I quit my job. And that's the sort of content, not saying that I want everyone that listens to quit their job, but whatever the thing is for them that will move them closer to their calling and where they're meant to be in life, I want my podcast to have that impact. And so I see a bunch of things associated with that. Like we're making a big push on the merch at the moment. It's not out yet, but it will be in the next few weeks. I think I want to do more like consulting and coaching stuff similar to this, or like one-on-one. We're going to start rolling that out soon. I think one of the things that Arlan mentioned to me actually very early on, and like for context for people, Arlan's been a huge supporter of the show, and like we wouldn't be in the position that we're in without some of the things that she's helped with. But I remember one of the early things that Arlan told me is that you're going to get to a point probably within the next 12 to 18 months where you're speaking on stages. And that was always, I remember when you told me that, I was like, what? What is she talking about? Like, how's that going to happen? And so I'd love to get to that place as well.
Thank you so much again. This is awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much, everyone. I loved this.